Hello and welcome to the Adulting 101 video series. This is going to be a quick version video. That means I'm going to keep the video to 15 minutes or less, but for you it's going to be more interactive. Hopefully you have the notes that go along with it and maybe a digging deeper activity to do an exploration afterwards as well. I'm going to invite you to pause after each slide. That'll give you time to write down what you learned, maybe jot down a question or a thought that you have, and then if you're working with a group, maybe you're at home with your family or at school with a class, that'll give you time to discuss the prompts in the lower left-hand corner, like what's your purpose in learning about this topic? Well, our topic today is one that I learned a lot about when I had to build this presentation, and that is tipping. So this is part of our personal finance collection, and here's what we're going to talk about today. Why do we tip? When do we tip? And how much do we tip? And the answer is it's really complicated and there's a lot to learn. So let's dig in. Our big idea. In adulthood, we pay for goods and services. If there's a specific person responsible for delivering those goods or services, we often pay them extra for their work, separate from the price of the goods and services themselves. And that is called tipping, or the more technical term for that is gratuity. So it's where we pay extra to the person who made it possible. So why do we do that? There are several reasons why we tip. Most people think of tipping as a way to show appreciation for good service. That's a great reason to tip someone. Also, in some states, service workers don't get minimum wage because the state assumes that people are paying them in tips. For example, one of the states near me doesn't have minimum wage for waiters and waitresses. They just assume that the customers are going to pay them a tip. So if you don't pay them, then they might not even be making minimum wage. In other professions, tipping is a way of maintaining a positive relationship. For example, if you have a nanny or a babysitter or a dog walker who works for your family long term, tipping them might be a way to make them work for you again in the future. All right, so how do we tip? In most cases, cash is the preferred form of tipping. So with that in mind, it's wise to go to the bank and get several $5 bills before you go on vacation, for example, so you're ready. In many cases, tipping is done electronically on a credit card receipt. So with that in mind, you often have to do that calculation in your head. So if you can practice multiplying any number by 0.2 to figure out what 20% would be, that's some good practice to be able to do that in your head. In other cases, tipping is setting a setting in a delivery app, like Instacart or Uber will have it built into the app. So then you just want to make sure that you read their tipping policy ahead of time. And if you notice that a delivery person just pauses and they're not walking away after they hand you something, that might mean that they're waiting for you to tip them. All right, so how much do we tip? It's different for each situation. So let's start with restaurants. This is probably the most common place where tipping happens. The general guidelines in the US right now estimate 15 to 20% for tipping. That's what you give to your wait staff, like your waiter or your waitress. If the service is notably bad, it's still appropriate to tip 10%, and giving that lower number can be a message like, hey, you really didn't do your job tonight, but you don't give them 0. It is not standard to tip on fast food. So if you go through a drive-through, you don't have to tip there. And same with takeout service. If you walk into the restaurant to pick up your food and take it away, you do not have to pay a tip. It is common to tip more during the holiday season. And if it's a fancy restaurant, they may already add it into your bill, especially if you have a lot of people at your table. Sometimes restaurants will say if you have a group of 5 or more, we automatically put, 20% gratuity on your bill, so you don't have a choice. All right, another common place to tip is for delivery drivers. If it's a food delivery, it's standard to tip 15 to 20%, much like in a restaurant. If it's flowers, the standard is $5 in cash. If it's mail or packages, there are kind of different ways to do that. Some people provide a tip or small gift at the end of the year for their postal carrier. Amazon does have an option for you to tip on the app. Some people do that. And then in some neighborhoods like mine, people will leave out a box of snacks on the front step. And that just says, hey, delivery drivers, take what you need. And so that can be another way to tip your delivery people. In terms of drink tipping, if you're not ordering food, just beverages, here are some common guidelines. It's common to pay $1 tip for a simple drink like a beer or a wine or a soda, $2 for a mixed drink. So that would be at a bar where they're actually mixing different things together for you. $1 for a prepared coffee, like at Starbucks. Or if you're ordering coffee, to just drop whatever change you get back. So let's say it cost you $5.50 and you give them $6 and you got 50 cents left in your hand. You put the extra 50 cents in the tip jar. Okay, let's move on to hotels. Staying at a hotel means that there are many members who are serving you, and here are some general ideas. It's common to tip 20% on any meal. That might be at a restaurant, but it might be room service if somebody delivers food to your room. You want to tip them. Anyone who helps you, like if they carry your bag, if they call a cab for you, if they deliver towels to your room, or they drive the shuttle, $5 each is appropriate. And then it's also common to leave $5 on the counter to pay the housekeeping staff a tip as well. Next, let's talk about moving. The first time you move into an apartment or a house, you might ask your friends and family to help you. It's not normal to tip them in money. It is normal to pay them with food and drink. So you order a bunch of pizzas and beverages for people and say, thank you so much. Next time you move, let me know and I'll be there to help. As you get older and you have more furniture, maybe heavier furniture, and your friends are getting older and they have bad backs and knees, it's more common to hire professional movers. If you do that, the standard in the US right now is $10 per hour per mover. So if I had 3 movers there for 2 hours, that would be $60 total. In terms of driving, if you get a ride, it's common to tip in some way. If your friend gives you a ride to the airport or drives the carpool, it's common to bring cash to help pay for gas or just to offer to drive the next time if that's something that you think you'll balance out. If you pay for a personal driver, like a taxi, a limo, or a car service, 15 to 20% is normal. If it's a shared driver like Uber or Lyft, if you're sharing it with other people, 10 to 15% is standard. If you take a free shuttle bus, like if a hotel has a free shuttle bus to take you to the airport, $5 cash to the driver is pretty normal. And if you're taking public transportation, a bus, a train, or a light rail, a tip is normally not expected there. Another common place to tip is the spa or the salon. So 15 to 20% is normal, and that would be for things like manicures, pedicures, haircuts, hair coloring, hair styling, massage and facial services, grooming and waxing, whether that's you or a pet, same thing, cold therapy and laser treatments, eyelash extensions, and makeup. And then a lot of people pay for caregivers. So if you have a person who takes care of your children, like a babysitter or a nanny, or a vulnerable adult, maybe a personal care attendant, or an elderly relative, maybe a hospice nurse or something, a pet, or your home. If it's just a one-time service, like babysitting, maybe 15 to 20% is standard. Sometimes if something bad happened, if like you paid somebody, you agreed to pay them $20 to babysit, but the kid puked and was kind of a mess while you were gone, then you might pay them an extra $5 or $10 to say sorry about that. If it's a sustained relationship, like a nanny who works for you every single week, or a personal care attendant or a housekeeper who works for you on a regular basis, some people handle tipping by giving them an extra week's pay at the end of the year as kind of like a end of the year holiday bonus. Probably the most expensive example of tipping is weddings. The married couple is expected to tip nearly everyone who helped put the wedding together. Sometimes the expectations are included in the contract, so you know what they are expecting. If not, it's typical to pay $20 per hour to every server, $20 per hour to every bartender, $2 per guest for the coat room attendants, $2 per guest for the bathroom attendants, and 15 to 20% to the DJ, the wedding planner, the baker, the florist, and the officiant. One thing to think about, all of these numbers I've shared with you today are the common standards in the United States, but they're very different when you travel. So before you travel to an international destination, Google tipping in and the name of the country. For example, in some European countries, there's no tipping on food in restaurants. That's not expected. There are some countries where tipping is considered offensive. So just make sure that you Google that before you travel. All right, let's see if this was helpful. Can you think of 3 ideas you want to take away from our lesson today? Do you have an understanding of why we tip? Do you have a general number in mind of just a standard amount to tip? And can you think of one or two specific situations or scenarios or settings where you might have to look up the appropriate amounts to tip before you get there? All right, well, I hope this was helpful to you. I certainly learned a lot researching this one. If this was helpful, this is again part of the personal finance collection, but these are all the different adulting topics I have available. So if any of them sound helpful to you, check them out. All right, good luck to you and good luck with tipping.